Hi guys! Welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we are going to talk about how to determine whether the crime is only attempted or frustrated or it is consummated. So this video basically is very relevant for my video about Article 6 of the Revised Penal Code. So
medyo mataas yung video na to guys, and also kung mapapansin nyo, more on reading ako sa video na ito kasi gusto kong ma-record or ma-notes yung nasa book. So, pagpasensyahan nyo na. So, if you don't want a video which is reading lang at saka less explanation, so you can skip this one. So, I'm making this one para may notes ako or parang ganon. So, without any further chok-chakan, my gosh. So, let's start the discussion or reading.
So, in determining whether the felony is only attempted or frustrated or it is consummated, number 1, we need to know is the nature of the offense. Number 2, the elements constituting the felony. And number 3, as well as the manner of committing the same, must be considered. So, first one, let's go to the first tutioness, which is the nature of the crime. So, under arson, Article 320 to 326. So, in arson, it is not necessary that the property is totally destroyed by fire. The crime of arson is therefore consummated even if only a portion of the wall or any other part of the house is burned. So, the consummation of the crime of arson does not depend upon the extent of the damage caused. This is under the case of People versus Hernandez.
So, sa arson pala guys, kahit konti lang yung part ng bahay mo yung nasunog. So, it is consummated na. So, hindi necessary na masunog tanan bahay or masunog tanan building or whatever. So, as long as may konting sunog yung wall or ganon, so the crime of arson is already consummated.
So, the fact of having set fire to some rugs and jute sacks, soaked in kerosene oil and placing them near the wooden partition of the house should not be qualified as consummated arson. In as much as no part of the house began to burn, it is only frustrated arson. This is under the case of U.S. versus Valdez. So pag may mga nakita lang na mga rugs or mga sack na nakababad sa kerosene oil, ganon, tapos wala pang sindihan na nagaganap or it is only near on a wooden partition ng bahay, so hindi siya magiging qualified under consummated arson. So, it is only frustrated arson. So, this is based or this is stated under the case. Under U.S. versus Valdez. So, when a person had poured gasoline under the house of another and was about to strike a match to set the house on fire, when he was apprehended, he was guilty of attempted arson. The acts performed by him are directly connected with the crime of arson. The offense he intended to commit, the pouring of gasoline under the house and the striking of the match, would not be for any other purpose. So, if there was blaze but no part of the house was burned, so the crime is frustrated. But if any part of the house, no matter how small, is burned, the crime of arson is consummated. So, again, sa attempted arson, yung part lang na binuhusan mo siya ng gasolina, kaso hindi mo pa siya na anuhan ng match. So, attempted arson na siya. So, actually, may controversy, controversial or showbiz tong ang arson na to. Kasi hindi kasi kami dumating sa arson na case sa criminal law 2 ko, which is yung mga crimes and penalties. Hindi kami mabot ng arson kasi naubusan na kami ng time. Pero may controversy kasi na may comment kasi ako nabasa na wala daw frustrated or attempted arson. So again guys, yung video ko is hindi to based sa knowledge ko. So based to sa libro or reference na ginamit ko, which is from Luis B. Reyes. At saka yung book ko is, bago pa naman to. This is 2017. Kita ba? So, this is a book of Luis B. Reyes, 2017. So,
So, as you may know, our laws are not absolute, no? It changes as time changes, ganon. So, nauulit or na-update, na-amend, nare-repel yung mga laws natin. So, kung may sinasabi ako ngayon dito, maritong maging iba na in the future kasi maring ma-amend or ma-repel yung ganon. So, yung diniscuss ko about arson is based lang po to sa book ni Luis B. Reyes. And I think, kasi hindi talaga kami umabot ng arson, tsaka wala pa kayo hindi ako naka-review about arson, honestly, sa book 2 ko. Pero, yung sinasabi kasi niya, 2017 pa to guys, and bago lang yung 2019, January 2019 pa lang ngayon. So, I don't know if na-amend ba, or wala na ba yung arson na, frustrated or attempted. So, yung video ko, again, based lang to sa book. So, ganun na nga, no? Mag-proceed na tayo. Wala nang daghang advertisement. Ganun.
So, now, let's proceed to elements constituting a felony. So, di ba, ang first one is nature of the offense. The second one naman is the elements constituting a felony. So, in theft, the crime is consummated when the theft is able to take or get hold of the thing belonging to another, even if he is not able to carry it away. While in estafa, the crime is consummated when the offended party is actually damaged or prejudiced. So under theft, a custom inspector abstracted a leather belt from the baggage of a Japanese and secretedly it in a drawer of his deck in the customs house, where it was found by other customs employee. The court of first instance convicted him of frustrated theft. The Supreme Court considered it consummated theft because all the elements necessary of its execution and accomplishment were present. So this is cited under the case of U.S. versus Adiao. Actual taking with intent to gain of personal property belonging to another without the latter's consent is sufficient to constitute consummated theft. So, it is not necessary that the offender carries away or appropriates the property taken. And then under the estafa, defendant was a salesman of a Philippine education company. After he had received 750 pesos for a sale of book, which he should have given to the cashier, he put it in his pocket with the intent to misappropriate the amount. Rule is he is frustrated. This is a frustrated estafa. This is stated under the case of U.S. versus Dominguez. So the accused performed all the acts of execution. However, the crime was not consummated as there was no damage caused in view of the timely discovery of the felonious act. So in this kind of estafa, the elements of number 1, abuse of confidence, and 2, damage of the offended party must concur. So, ganon. Now, let us proceed to the question, is there a conflict in the ruling of Adiao case and Dominguez case? So dun ba, may conflict ba dun sa case na nag-example ko? So, sa Adiao case, which is the first case under sa theft, was consummated although the belt was only secreted in defendant's case. Well, in the Dominguez case, the estafa was only frustrated even if the sales money was already in defendant's pocket. So apparently, they should both be either consummated or frustrated. So the difference lies in the elements of the two crimes. So yung pag pinagkaiba daw kuno niya is nandun daw sa elements ng crime. So sa estafa kasi, the offended party must be actually prejudiced or damaged. So this element is lacking in the Dominguez case. While in theft, the mere removal of the personal property belonging to another with the intent to gain is sufficient. So the act of removing the personal property constitutes the element of taking in theft, and in a jail case, only the element of taking is in question, and that element is considered present because he abstracted or removed the leather belt from the baggage where it was kept and secreted it in the drawer of his deck. The taking was complete. So, ito yung sinasabi nung, so yung elements is dapat mong i-consider para malaman mo kung na-constitute ba yung crime or yes. Kasi iba-iba yung mga elements ng mga crimes. So, dun ka dapat mag-base. So, yun yun. So, consummated theft. So in Supply Depot at Quezon City, the accused removed from the file 9 pieces of hospital linen and took them to their truck where they were found by a corporal of the MP guards when they tried to pass through the checkpoint. It was held that the crime committed was consummated theft. This is cited in the case of People versus Spiritu. Rulings on frustrated theft. A truck loaded with stolen boxes of rifles was on the way out of a checkpoint in South Harbor, surrounded by a tall fence. When the MP guard discovered the boxes of the truck, it was held that the crime committed was frustrated theft because of the timely discovery of the box of the truck before it could pass out to the checkpoint. So this is cited under the case of People versus Denyo. So the court cannot bring ourselves to agree in the appellant's contention that the crime was consummated. The traditional ruling cited by the appellee is qualified by the phrase "is placed in a situation where he could dispose of its contents at once." So obviously, while the truck and the van were still within the compound, the appellant could not have disposed the goods at once. So this is entirely different from the case where a much less bulky and more common things as money was the object of the crime, where freedom to dispose or make use of it is palpably less restricted. This is cited under the case of People versus Flores. And now let's see the distinction between the case of Spiritu and Denyo cases. So in the Spiritu case, it was held that the crime of theft was consummated because the thieves were able to take or get hold of the hospital linen, and that the only thing that was frustrated, which does not constitute any elements of theft, is the use or benefit that the thieves expected to derive from commission of the offense. While under the case of Denyo, it was held that the crime committed is that of frustrated theft because the fact determinative of consummation of the crime of theft is the ability of the offender to dispose freely of the article stolen, even if it were more or less momentarily. So the Court of Appeals followed the opinion of Viada in this case. So when the meaning of an element of a felony is controversial, there is bound to arise different rulings as to the stage of the execution of the felony.
So meaning, if magkaiba yung meaning ng element sa felony or controversial siya, so there is bound to arise different rulings as to the stage of the execution of that felony. So ganon yon.
So there is no crime of frustrated theft. The Supreme Court has held that there is no crime of frustrated theft, thereby declining to adopt the Denyo and Flores rulings in this jurisdiction. The accused were cited by a security guard outside a supermarket hauling a pushcart with cases of detergents and thereafter loading said cases of detergent in a taxi. When the taxi was stopped by a security guard who asked the accused for a receipt for the merchandise, the accused fled on foot but were apprehended and the stolen merchandise was recovered. The Supreme Court held that the crime committed was consummated theft. It was held that the ability of the offender to freely dispose of the property stolen is not constitutive element of the crime of theft. It finds no support or extension in Article 308, whether as a descriptive or operative element of theft or as the mens rea or actus reus of the felony. For the purpose of ascertaining whether theft is susceptible of commission in the frustrated stage, the question is again, when is the crime of theft produced? So there would be all but certain anonymity in the position that theft is produced when there is deprivation of personal property due to its taking by one with intent to gain. Viewed from the perspective, it is immaterial to the product of the felony that the offender, once having The offender, once having committed all the acts of execution for theft, is able or unable to freely dispose the property stolen, since the deprivation of the owner alone has already ensued from such of the acts of execution. So, ayun nga, hindi ibig sabihin na hindi pa siya na-dispose. Magiging, na siya, frustrated, ganon. So, the fact na na-deprive yung owner sa personal right niya dun sa kanyang personal property or sa property niya, so the crime of theft is already committed. So, there would be no such crime as frustrated theft. So, ayun yun. Yung point na argument na ito. So, it might be argued that the ability of the offender to freely dispose of the properties stolen delves into the concept of taking itself, in that there could be no true taking until the actor obtains such degree of control over the stolen item. But even if this were correct, the effect would be downgrade the crime to its attempted and not frustrated stage. For it would mean that not all the acts of execution have not been completed, the taking not having been accomplished. So the court is satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that the taking by the petitioner was completed in this case with intent to gain. He acquired physical possession of the stolen cases of detergent for a considerable period of time, that he was able to drop this off at the spot of the parking lot and long enough to load into a taxi cab. So, indeed, the court, after all, held that unlawful taking or apoderamiento is deemed complete from the moment the offender gains possession of the thing, even if he has no opportunity to dispose the same. This is cited under the case of People versus Olobio, People versus Bernabe, People versus Bostenera. So, insofar as the court considers the present question, unlawful taking is most material in this respect. So, unlawful taking, which is the deprivation of one's personal property, is the element which produced the felony in its consummated stage. At the same time, without unlawful taking as an act of execution, the offense could not be only attempted theft, if at all. With this consideration, the court can only conclude that under Article 308 of the Revised Penal Code, theft cannot have a frustrated stage. Theft can be attempted or consummated. So, wala pong frustrated theft. Yun lang yung punot dulo. Yun lang yung ibig sabihin ng mataas kong binasabi. Walang frustrated theft. Yun lang. This is cited under the case of Valenzuela versus People. So, ay naku, may example pa ng attempted theft at may example din na attempted estafa by means of deceit. Tapos may example pa of frustrated estafa by means of deceit. Tapos mere removal of property does not sufficient to consummate the crime of robbery by the use of force upon things. Oh my gosh, Dad, I will just write this on the description box. Hindi ko na siya kayang basahin, dai. So, let's proceed na sa last, no? Sa last na, kachuchuhan, which is the manner of committing the crime. So, the manner of committing the crime, number one is formal crimes. So, what is formal crime? So, ay, nakakapagod ba? Nakakapagod. So, formal crimes are consummated in one instant, no attempt. So, there are crimes like slander and false testimony which are consummated in one instant by a single act. These are formal crimes. So, yung mga crimes na in one instant consummated na agad-agad, wala nang attempted, wala nang frustrated, ganun-ganun. In one instance, pag na-perform yung crime na yun, pak, ganun, consummated na. So, yun yung tinatawag nating formal crimes. So, as a rule, there can be no attempt at a formal crime because between the thought and the deed, there is no change of acts that can be severed in any link. Thus, is slander. There is either a crime or no crime at all, depending upon whether or not defamatory words were spoken publicly. So, in a sale of marijuana and other prohibited drugs, the mere act of selling or even acting as broker consummates the crime. This is under the case of People versus Marcos. The number two is crimes consummated by mere attempt or proposal or by overt act. So, flight to enemy's country, Article 121. So, in this crime, the mere attempt to flee to an enemy country is a consummated felony. And then corruption of minors under Article 340, a mere proposal to the minor to satisfy the lust of another will consummate the offense. So there is no attempted crime. There is no attempted crime of treason because the overt act in itself consummates the crime. So those crimes na yung kanyang overt act is consummate na siya. Ginagawa niyang consummate yung crime niya. And then the third one is felony by omission. So there can be no attempted stage when the felony is by omission because in this kind of felony, the offender does not execute acts. He omits to perform an act which the law requires him to do. But killing a child by starving him, although apparently by omission, is in fact by commission. Number 4, crimes requiring the intervention of two persons to commit them are consummated by mere agreement. So in those crimes like betting and sport contests and corruption of public officers under Article 197 and Article 212, which requires the intervention of two persons to commit them, the same are consummated by mere agreement. So the offer made by one of the parties to the other constitutes attempted felony if the offer is rejected. This is under the case of U.S. versus Basa. So in view of the rule stated, it would seem that there is no frustrated bribery or corruption of public officer, but in the case of People versus Diego Ken, it was held by the Supreme Court that where the defendant fails to corrupt a public officer because the latter returned the money given by the defendant, the crime committed is frustrated bribery, corruption of public officer under Article 212 in relation to Article 6. So, in case of U.S. versus Titong, where the roll of bills amounting to 500 pesos was accepted by the police officer for the purpose of using the same as evidence in the prosecution of the accused for attempted bribery, attempted corruption of a public officer, it was held that the accused who delivered the money was guilty of attempted bribery. Now let's proceed to number 5. Let's make it fast. Material crime. So there are 3 stages of execution. So first one is consummated rape. Thus, homicide, rape, etc. are not consummated in one instant or by single act. So these are the material crimes. So,
yung material crimes is yung mga crimes na hindi makakonsummate in a single or an instant act. So, ganun. So, for example, a consummated rape, the accused lay on top of the girl, 9 years of age. For over 15 minutes, the girl testified that there was partial penetration of the male organ in her private part and that she felt intense pain. Held entry of labia or lips of the female organ without rupture of the hymen or laceration of the vagina is generally held sufficient to warrant conviction of the accused for a consummated crime of rape. This is under the case of People versus Hernandez. So, frustrated rape. So, there is no crime of frustrated rape. Walang frustrated rape, sabi nito. So, in People versus Erenia, where accused endeavored to have sexual intercourse with a girl 3 years and 11 months old, and there was doubt whether he succeeded in penetrating the vagina, the Supreme Court held there being no conclusive evidence of penetration of the genital organ of the child, the accused is entitled to the benefit of the doubt and can only be found guilty of frustrated rape. However, in the case of People versus Ortia, for consummation of rape, perfect penetration is not essential. Any penetration of the female organ of the male is sufficient. Entry of labia or lips of the female organ without rupture of the hymen or laceration of vagina is sufficient to warrant conviction. Taking into account the nature, elements, and manner of execution, the crime of rape, and jurisprudence on the matter, it is hardly convincible how the frustrated stage in rape can be committed. So the Supreme Court further held that the Irenia case appears to be a stray decision inasmuch as it has not been reiterated in the court's subsequent decision. So, attempted rape, oh my god, napakadami nito. The woman was awakened when he felt that the accused, who was wearing only briefs and crouching over her, was pulling down her pajamas and panties. He resisted and pulled up his pajamas and panties, but the appellant pulled him down
to the knees and smashed her breast. When the accused went towards the CD player, which in front of the door of her room inserted a CD, the woman found an opportunity to escape and the accused failed to restrain him. Here, this case is held attempted rape under the case of Tibong versus People. Now, let's go to comment. Oh my god. Now, let's go to consummated homicide. So, accused appellant shot the victim in the left forearm while he and the victim were grappling for the gun. His co-accused, who was remained at large, stabbed the victim in the chest. The victim died and it was established that the cause of death was hemorrhage secondary to stab wound. It is ruled that accused appellant was found guilty of homicide, there being no qualifying circumstance to make the killing a murder. The fact that he did not inflict a mortal wound is of no moment since the existence of conspiracy was satisfactorily shown by the evidence. This is cited in the case of People versus Sazon. Then, under frustrated murder, the accused stabbed his two victims as they were about to close their store in the evening. One of the victims died while the other recovered. It was ruled that the assault upon the surviving victim constituted frustrated murder. Her relatively quick recovery being the result of the prompt medical attention which prevented the infection of the wound from reaching fatal proportions which would otherwise have ensued. The attack was qualified by tertiary or aliviosa. This is under the case of People versus Mission. And the last one is attempted homicide. So, the accused intended to kill his victim, but he was not able to perform all the acts of execution necessary to consummate the killing. The wounds inflicted did not affect vital organs. They were not mortal. He first warned his victim before shooting him. Held attempted homicide under People versus Ramote. So, there is no attempted or frustrated impossible crime. So, in impossible crime, the person intending to commit an offense has already performed the acts for the execution of the same, but nevertheless, the crime is not produced by reason of the fact that the act intended is by its nature one of impossible accomplishment, or because the means employed by such person are essentially inadequate or ineffectual to produce the result desired by him. This is under Article 59 of the RPC. Therefore, since the offender in impossible crime has already performed the acts of execution of the same, and there could be no attempted impossible crime. So, in attempted felony, the offender has not performed all the acts of execution which would produce the felonious consequence. So, there is no frustrated impossible crime because the acts performed by the offender are considered as constituting a consummated offense. So, that ends my video. So, sino bang nanonood nito? I'm so sorry this video is full of reading only because this is, I make this video as a notes or para hindi na ako magbasa ng libro ko. Makikinig na lang ako sa pinagdadaldal ko ngayon sa video ko. So, again, sa mga nanood at umabot dito sa last portion ng video ko, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something even though yung video to is basa lang, besh. Again, thank you so much. Bye-bye!